tell you a story. I have this song. It's called Promise. If you haven't heard it, I'm gonna throw a link up here. Anyway, long story short, I was writing it and I just, I love worship and I love being able to perform my songs with the worship team. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna write some keys into this song. And I did. And I was like, loop-a-da-dip-a-da-da, this sounds like trash. So I sent it off to someone who knows more than I do about sound. And I was like, dude, you gotta help me. And when he sent it back, he had done something really clever that actually changed the entire sound of everything and made it sound good and not like trash. I hadn't even thought of this, but this solution completely changed the sound, and I'll tell you more about it on the other side. What is up, Yoshis? My name is Beth and I run Steadfast Ascent. It is so good to see you here today. Today I'm going to talk about some tips and strategies that I use to take my keys and make them sound a little less tonally sad and like they are fake, and a little more like an actual piano is playing. Or keyboard, depending on what instrument you're really going for. Now this does come from the perspective of someone who is not a piano player. I don't know nothing about how it is really supposed to sound, and honestly, I don't even play that well. I am trying to play better because that's one of the first things that I would tell you to try and do, is to never, if you can help it, play the MIDI sound with just writing in the keys or using a virtual keyboard. Using a real keyboard to make your keys is just super helpful because it actually gets the human velocities and also human sustain, because honestly sustain is a pain in the butt to add in post, which is number 2, sustain is your friend. You can, of course, once you have recorded something virtually, whether you penciled that in with the command edit or the pencil tool or not, you can go in and you can select all of your MIDI notes and you can click the button humanize or even randomize depending on what you're going for. What this does is it takes the velocity, which if you are recording without a keyboard, or even on some keyboards it won't actually translate the velocities that you're playing with, and you can just click a button and it will randomize or algorithmically humanize all of the velocities that you have played for you, which is a relief. My third tip is to not use quantization where possible. Okay, sometimes I just get lag when I'm trying to play, and in that case it is helpful to use quantization. But if you think about how an actual person plays piano, when you're playing, you're not playing literally however many notes at a time, let's say 5, at the same time. On your bass hand, your one finger might hit sooner than the other. And on your chording hand, for certainly you are going to hit them at a different time, and it's not going to be on beat precisely, which is why quantization should be kept to a minimum, and is again one of those things where being able to play the piece and not have to edit it so much in post is really helpful for keeping the sound more realistic. One of the things that I like to do in order to help my MIDI tracks sound more realistic is to really not use too many of them. Where possible, I try to record an actual thing so that when I have to use MIDI, it is more of a cream on top of a really nice cake. The cake itself is going to be solid, and if I do my MIDI right, you might not notice. It might not glare out at you so much as might happen if I try and or when I try to use only MIDI instruments in a track that's not a dance track. Using it sparingly also helps your listeners, which just makes the whole thing so much better. My fifth tip is to try different instruments. Remember, you're using MIDI, which means that you might have multiple versions of a piano inside of your library. This is fantastic because it means that you can write the instructions out and listen to different instruments playing that part. One instrument might just sound better for this song than another one, which is the joy of MIDI. The lack of joy on MIDI is our last point, which is that mixing is way more important on a MIDI instrument than it is on a well-mic'd instrument. You probably need to go in and do some work in terms of EQing and compression and all of the things in order to make your keys sound better. So now that we've listed those things, can you guess which one that my sound engineer friend did to make my track sound better? If you guessed he used a different instrument, you would be right. I had sent him a grand piano playing my part, and he sent me back with a nice warm pad, or it might have been a keyboard. I don't know, clearly not a piano player, but it just sounded so much more full and wonderful, honestly. And I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that? Now I know that, I should think of that. And so maybe my recordings will sound a little less garbage-like and a little more pièce de résistance. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, what are you doing in your MIDI when it comes to keys that is or is not working? What are the problems that you are finding? And let's try and solve those together down in the comments. If you've made it so far, it helps me a lot if you would let me know if this video is helpful to you by leaving a like. And like I mentioned, if you want to subscribe so that you can see more about what is happening and what we are doing, you may do so to learn more about recording, and or you can check out this series. All links are found down below in the description, or wherever they put the description these days. And if you have made it this far, thank you so very much for watching.